My name is Evan Mercer, age 29, currently employed as a night shift associate at Silver Crown Distribution, a mid-size logistics warehouse situated on the outskirts of Reno, Nevada. It sits half a mile beyond a frontage road that dead ends into desert scrub. From the highway, you wouldn't even know it's there. Just a faint orange glow in the distance, like an ember that never goes out. I took the job 3 months ago after being laid off from a landscaping company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than most overnight gigs, and the manager, Mr. Kearney, seemed decent enough when I interviewed. He mentioned that night shifts were low traffic and mostly involved inventory logging, forklift checks, and maintaining security rounds. He didn't mention the list. The rules were handed to me on my first full night. A single sheet of paper, printed and laminated, taped beside the clock in terminal. Standard protocol, Kearney said, waving it off when I asked. I thought it was a joke, some hazing thing for new hires. The text was simple but oddly phrased, as if translated from another language. 1. Do not look directly at the mirrors in loading bay 3 after 1100 p.m. 2. If the lights flicker more than 3 times, stand still until they stop. 3. If you hear a knock from the west door, do not open it. No one uses that entrance. 4. Keep the intercom off unless Mr. Kearney speaks first. 5. If you see movement between aisles D and E, log it as routine inspection. Do not investigate. 6. Leave the building by 600 a.m. sharp. The alarms are automatic. Do not linger. Someone had signed the bottom in black marker. SC and GHT Chef 2. I remember chuckling at it. When I clocked in that first night, the place was quiet, half lit, and smelled like concrete dust. Forklifts sat in neat rows, their charging lights blinking. Somewhere deeper in the dark, an old radio played faint country music. One of the guys in maintenance must have left it on. Around 10, I was joined by Terry, a veteran night worker with the posture of someone permanently bored. He looked at me over his thermos and said, "You read the rules yet?" "Yeah," I said, guessing that's an inside joke. Terry didn't smile. "Sure," he said. "A joke." Then he added, "Just don't stare at bay 3. You'll do fine." He spent most of the shift in the forklift bay, humming tunelessly, sipping coffee that smelled burnt. I logged inventory, scanned barcodes, and filled out the nightly report on a slow computer that hummed like a trapped insect. It was routine, until it wasn't. Around 11:15, the overhead fluorescence started to pulse. 3 long flickers, then 1 sharp blackout. The entire building went quiet for that 1 second, as if power itself held its breath. Then the lights steadied again. Terry froze mid-step. "That's 3, he muttered. "Stay put." I stayed, not because I believed the rule, but because he said it with the kind of tone you don't argue with. For half a minute, neither of us moved. Then, just as suddenly, the hum of the lights returned. "You're good," Terry said, resuming his walk like nothing had happened. Later that night, I asked him what was up with those rules. He said they came from corporate safety, though he couldn't recall when. The paper had been up since before he started, 2 years back. Sometimes, he said, they add 1 or 2 lines, then take them down again. You'll get used to it. I didn't. By my 3rd week, I noticed details I'd missed before. The west door, the one we weren't supposed to open, had a new padlock, heavy-duty double-bolted. Someone had painted over the old window, leaving a smear of black that reflected the warehouse lights in dull ripples. And in loading bay 3, where the mirrors hung above the alignment lanes, the rule about not looking after 1100, there was something about the air that felt electric. The mirrors themselves weren't decorative. They were convex safety mirrors to help forklift drivers see around corners. But at night, they seemed too bright, catching the light in ways that didn't make sense. You'd move past one and swear you saw a second version of yourself still standing there. A beat too slow. One night, curiosity won. It was a Tuesday, around 11:30. Terry was on break, and I was doing inventory along aisle F. The lights were steady, the intercom silent. I thought about that first rule, about how dumb it was, and before I could talk myself out of it, I walked to Bay 3. The mirrors lined the wall above the loading platform, 7 of them in a row. The surface of each one shimmered faintly, reflecting the long stretch of the warehouse behind me. Forklifts, pallets, the faint glow of the exit sign. When I stepped closer, I noticed something odd. My reflection wasn't delayed, exactly, but it wasn't perfect either. The shadows behind me were off, reversed, slightly darker, like the overhead lights were coming from another angle inside the mirror. I leaned closer. The reflection leaned too, but slower, as if caught in thicker air. My heart knocked once, hard. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, the reflection smiled. I didn't. The lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. And the reflection's grin stretched wider, like glass bending under heat. I stepped back so fast I hit a crate, nearly dropping my scanner. Then, as quickly as it began, everything snapped back to normal. The mirror showed only me, pale and shaking. Terry found me 10 minutes later. "You looked," he said. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. My voice cracked when I said, "What the hell is that place?" He didn't answer, just said, "Some things in this building remember before it was a warehouse. Before any of us worked here." That night, I finished my shift without another word. When I got home around 6:15, my phone buzzed with a message from Kearney. "Next time, leave by 600 sharp." The alarms reset automatically. Safety reasons. I hadn't told him I stayed late. The next evening, I arrived early. The desert heat still clung to the air, but the warehouse interior was cool, sterile. I glanced at the rules again, reading them slower this time. Someone had underlined the last line. "Do not linger." Terry wasn't there that night. Kearney said he called out sick. I'd never seen him take a sick day. By 10:45, I was alone, pushing a cart through the aisles. The hum of the lights grew louder near the center of the building. Somewhere, a metallic clank echoed. Probably a crate shifting. I tried to focus on the job. Then the intercom crackled. A voice said. It was deep, steady. Not Kearney's, but close enough to make me second guess. "Yeah," I said, hesitating. The intercom buzzed again, a dry hiss. Then the same voice, "Come to Bay 3. I froze. "Rule number 4. Keep the intercom off unless Mr. Kearney speaks first." But I hadn't turned it on. I looked toward the control booth. The light on the panel was red, active. "Avan," the voice said again, softer this time. "I need your help." The hairs on my arms rose. I backed away, forcing a laugh at myself. Probably some prank from another worker, maybe Kearney testing me. Still, I walked to the intercom and switched it off. The hum died instantly. A few seconds passed. Then, from the far end of the warehouse, came the faint sound of knocking. 3 soft, deliberate knocks from the west door. I didn't move. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs felt like sandbags. The knocks came again, louder. Then silence. When I finally reached for my phone, the screen lit up before I could touch it. A message notification from an unknown number. "Don't open it." I looked around. No one. Just the echo of the message's glow reflecting off metal shelving. By the time I clocked out that morning, the air outside smelled like ozone and rain, though the sky was clear. My hands shook the whole drive home. That afternoon, I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that reflection in Bay 3, smiling too wide, teeth like wet glass. When I returned that evening, Kearney was waiting by the entrance. His tie was crooked, and he looked more tired than usual. "Terry's not coming back," he said. "What happened?" I asked. He hesitated. He didn't say. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Let's make sure you're clear on the rules, Evan. They're for your safety," he said, it like someone repeating a prayer they didn't believe anymore. Before I could ask anything else, he handed me a new laminated sheet. The same 6 rules. But now, a seventh line had been added at the bottom 7. If you hear your name after 2:00 a.m., do not answer. That night, I didn't go near Bay 3. But around 1:58, somewhere in the dim stretch between aisles, I heard my name. Not whispered, not shouted, just spoken, low, calm, and close. Ivan. It sounded exactly like me. The first time I heard my name echo back to me in that warehouse, I thought it was fatigue. It was almost 2 in the morning. The hum of the refrigeration units had become white noise, the kind that scrapes the edge of your nerves until you stop noticing it. But the voice, my voice, cut through everything. It was clean, like a recording played in reverse. Ivan. I stopped in the middle of aisle C, hand still gripping the scanner. The barcode light trembled across a stack of cardboard boxes, the red line shaking because my hand wouldn't stay steady. Ivan, it said again. My breath caught. The sound wasn't coming from any one direction. It was everywhere. Behind, above, pressed into the space between beeps of the scanner, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe Kearney was screwing with me. Maybe someone had left the intercom on, looping an old voice recording. I walked fast toward the control booth, the soles of my boots echoing across the concrete. The panel lights were all green. The intercom was off. That should have helped. It didn't. When I turned around, I saw something at the far end of the loading bay. Not movement exactly, more like a shadow standing still. The kind of stillness that only looks wrong once you notice. It's been holding the same shape too long. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart was pounding in a stupid, visible way. I told myself to breathe, to focus on what was in front of me: a metal desk, a clipboard, the flicker of the monitor clock switching from 2003 to 2004. It was enough to remind me of the new line on the rule sheet. If you hear your name after 2:00 a.m., do not answer. I realized then that I'd already broken it. When I got home that morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out. Not physically, but like static that clings to your skin after walking past a running TV. I stood in my small bathroom, looking into the mirror above the sink, waiting for my reflection to blink out of sync. It didn't. But when I turned off the light, I swear I heard a faint click from the mirror's frame. The next night, I tried to convince myself it was all a product of exhaustion. The desert air felt different that evening, heavy with an oncoming storm that hadn't yet decided to rain. The warehouse was cooler than usual, its hum gentler, as if it were aware I'd had enough. When I arrived, there was another change. The rule sheet by the clock in terminal had been reprinted. Same words, same neat font. Only now, the title across the top, Silver Crown Night Shift Protocol, had been crossed out with black marker. Underneath, someone had handwritten "Safalalo Replas." Kearney wasn't in yet. The office lights were off, blinds half closed. I didn't want to be alone, but I didn't want to call attention to how on edge I was either. I told myself, do your job, keep your head down, finish the shift. For the first few hours, that worked. I moved through inventory logs, checked the forklifts, marked down fuel levels. I even managed to hum along to the old radio someone had left tuned to a station out of Carson City. Then, at 11:22, the lights flickered again. Once, twice. They steadied. I held still, counting under my breath. 1, 3, 4. When nothing else happened, I exhaled. The relief lasted maybe 30 seconds, right until a voice came from the intercom. "Testing," it said. "Line check. Kearney." I recognized his tone. Calm and managerial, the kind that made you want to straighten your posture. "Everything good," I said before remembering the rule. "Keep the intercom off unless Mr. Kearney speaks first." I had broken another one. Silence. "Kearney," I said. Then, faintly, "He's not here." The air went thin. I stepped back, staring at the red light on the intercom panel, now blinking in slow rhythm. That wasn't his voice anymore. It was lower, drier. Almost like the sound of air forced through dust. "Who is this?" I asked before realizing the absurdity of asking. The light blinked faster. Then came a whisper, harsh and close, "Follow or replace." Every fluorescent tube in the ceiling popped at once. For half a heartbeat, the warehouse plunged into absolute dark. A darkness so dense it felt solid. I couldn't tell if my eyes were open or closed. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bleeding dim red across the aisles. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number again. A text, "Don't move. Count to 10. I froze. I counted slowly, each number scraping across my throat. When I reached 10, the main lights flickered back on, one by one, humming to life as though nothing had happened. The intercom light was off. I could hear the radio playing again somewhere near Bay 3. The same country song as before, but warped, like the tape had been chewed halfway through. I didn't finish the shift. I told myself I was sick, left a note for Kearney, and walked out. Outside, the air felt wrong too. The horizon shimmered like heat, even though the temperature had dropped. My car headlights caught on the chain link fence, and for a second I saw handprints pressed into the dust. Dozens of them, as if people had leaned against the metal from the inside trying to get out. I drove home faster than I should have. That night, I dreamed of aisles, endless rows of boxes stacked higher than I could see. Each box had a mirror for a lid, and in every reflection, I was looking back at myself, but older, thinner, mouth open like I was mid-sentence, trying to warn me of something I couldn't hear. When I woke, the clock said 600 p.m., time to go back. I told myself I wouldn't. I even typed out a resignation text to Kearney, thumb hovering over send. But the words blurred on the screen, and when I blinked, they were gone. Deleted, though I hadn't touched anything. So I went in. It was just before sunset. The sky cracked open in orange and purple, the desert air cooling fast. From the parking lot, the warehouse looked quiet, but there was a flicker inside, like someone was walking the aisles with a flashlight. When I stepped through the security door, the rule sheet was gone. The wall was bare, except for tape residue and the faint outline where the laminate used to hang. In its place, on the time clock terminal, someone had written a single sentence in Sharpie. "Welcome back, Ivan." The handwriting was mine. I stared at it so long the scanner beeped twice, demanding I clock in. My hands moved automatically, the badge sliding through the reader. The screen flashed green. Sishke 7:02 p.m. There was no one in sight. The place was quieter than I'd ever heard it. Even the radio was dead. I did the rounds. Aisle A through H, everything in order. Except in Bay 3, one of the mirrors was missing. A dark square on the wall where it had been. I felt a cold draft from that spot, like open air coming through a vent. When I leaned close, the reflection of the opposite wall shimmered. Not glass anymore, but liquid, rippling faintly, like wind across water. Something moved behind it, a face, pale and unfocused, pressing close from the other side. Not smiling this time, just staring. Then, softly, like a breath pressed through static, my own voice again. "Don't linger." I stumbled back, the words slamming into me with a physical kind of dread. That was the same phrase from the list, the last rule. When I turned to run, the lights flickered once more. Just once, and the air filled with a low hum, almost a note, vibrating in my bones. The loading dock doors began to rattle, every one of them. Metal slamming against its frame in a rhythm that wasn't random. I realized, too late, it was spelling something in Morse. Short, long, short, short, the pattern repeating again and again. Sus! I don't know how long it went on before everything stopped. The lights steadied. The air went still. I was standing alone in the middle of the warehouse, surrounded by silence so deep it felt like pressure. Then, faintly, from the far corner by the west door, came a sound like metal scraping on concrete. A small gap opened beneath the door, just enough for a folded piece of paper to slide through. It stopped halfway across the floor. I picked it up. It was the old rule sheet. Same 6 rules, then 7. But now an 8th line had been added in pen, Handwriting jagged and frantic. 8. When you replace him, lock the door. No signature. The padlock on the west door clicked shut by itself. I dropped the paper. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my throat. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and pointed it toward the mirrorless wall of Bay 3. Desperate to capture proof, anything to show I wasn't losing my mind. But in the camera preview, I saw something that wasn't there to my naked eye. The missing mirror was back, and in it, standing perfectly still, was me, holding the phone, frozen mid-shot, staring straight ahead while my real hand trembled. The reflection lifted its other hand and waved. The reflection's hand stayed raised, fingers splayed, as if testing the air between us. My phone shook in my grip, the preview screen a blur of my own face staring back. Eyes wide and wrong, I dropped the phone. The clatter broke whatever trance had been holding me. The mirror went blank, just a dull, empty square of glass again. For a moment, all I could hear was the electric hum of the lights and the echo of my pulse in my ears. Then my phone buzzed once where it had landed face down on the concrete. A new text, unknown number. He waved first. The message burned behind my eyes. I looked toward Bay 3 again. The glass didn't move. The air didn't move. But something knew I had read it. I didn't remember walking to the control booth, but suddenly I was there, slamming the door behind me, fumbling the latch that never quite worked. The booth sat half a story above the floor, windows on 3 sides, monitors showing grainy black and white feeds from every aisle. Except one, camera 4, the feed for Bay 3 was black. The others showed nothing unusual, empty aisles, pallets stacked, a forklift parked halfway through a turn. But the stillness made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the stillness of night. It was the stillness of something waiting for you to stop looking. The radio crackled once, a burst of static that bled into a faint country tune. Same station as always. Only this time, between lyrics, I heard a voice, low, muffled, like it was speaking from under running water. Don't linger. Evan, my name again. I pulled the plug from the wall. The song kept playing for 2 more beats before dying. That was when the motion sensor light flicked on in the corridor outside the booth. A soft, distant click. I turned, watching the grainy monitor labeled Hallway South. Something tall stood just beyond the doorframe, half in shadow. The proportions were wrong. Too long in the arms, too narrow in the head. Its outline flickered the way heat does above asphalt. Then, just as the camera auto-adjusted, it disappeared. The air in the booth grew heavy, pressing inward. I kept my eyes on the monitor, waiting for it to come back, but instead another feed changed. Camera 4, the one that had been black, blinked to life. Bay 3 filled the screen, and in the center of the frame stood me. I wasn't moving, just standing there, looking up at the camera. The image was flat and grayscale, but I could tell something was wrong with the face. The eyes were dark holes, no reflection. The mouth twitched once, like it was trying to remember how to smile. I hit the power button. The monitors went dead. Below me, something scraped across the concrete. A slow drag, like a boot heel sliding. It circled the base of the booth, once, twice. Then silence. I couldn't stay there. I bolted down the steps and out into the main floor, flashlight in hand, phone buzzing uselessly in my pocket. I didn't care about rules anymore. I needed the door. Any door. The west door was closest. The one no one used. The padlock gleamed under the light, tight and new. I yanked at it until my palms burned. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, a voice said, "You're not done yet." I turned, too fast, nearly slipped. The space between aisles was empty. My own shadow leaned long across the floor. Who's there? No answer. The air began to hum again, deep and low. Not mechanical. It was more like hearing your own blood from the inside of your skull. Then came the knock. 3 times, steady, from the outside of the west door. I backed away, counting the steps by instinct. 1, 2, 3, the door rattled. Hard, then went still. piece of paper fluttered out from beneath the gap, pushed by a faint draft. I didn't want to pick it up, but my hand moved anyway. It was another list. Same formatting, same font. But this one wasn't laminated. The paper was wet, like it had been soaked in something metallic. There were only 2 rules this time. 1. Do not let him leave. 2. End at dawn. I stared at it until the words started to blur. Even. That voice again, mine, from Bay 3. It echoed softer now, almost pleading. Please, it's cold. I walked toward it. I don't know why. Maybe because it sounded tired. Maybe because I didn't want to admit it was me. Bay 3 glowed faintly as I approached. The missing mirror was back in place, just as it had been before, reflecting the long stretch of warehouse behind me. But in that reflection, the aisles weren't empty. There were others, figures standing at intervals, blurred, pale faces turned toward me. Dozens of them spaced evenly, as if they'd been there all along and only the glass was showing the truth. I spun around. The actual aisles were empty. The reflection smiled. Not just mine now, all of them. Follow or replace, they whispered in unison. The lights above Bay 3 began to dim one by one, each buzz fading like a dying insect. I stepped back until my heel caught on a pallet. My flashlight beam jerked across the floor, catching a glint of something metallic near the edge of the dock. It was a name tag. Terry's. The plastic cracked, clip bent out of shape. I dropped to one knee, heart thudding in my throat. The air smelled faintly like burnt copper. From behind me, a slow creak of metal. The west door was opening. I turned just in time to see the padlock lying on the floor, unlatched, though I hadn't touched it. The door itself was ajar, showing nothing but black beyond. Not night black, deeper, thicker, like the dark inside a buried room. The draft that came through was warm and smelled like old dust. Something moved inside it. Not forward, not backward, but around, like it was sliding along the edges of the doorway without crossing through. Don't linger, I whispered to myself, the words trembling out of habit. A faint sound drifted from the dark. Breathing, slow, steady, in rhythm with mine. Then it spoke, voice hoarse and human and very close. You broke the rule first. My body reacted before my brain could. I ran, through aisles, past stacked pallets, across the concrete that felt suddenly too soft underfoot. I didn't look back until I reached the main exit. The keypad was flashing red. My badge wouldn't scan. I slammed it again and again until my hand ached. Behind me, the hum built into a single deep note. The kind of frequency you feel more than hear. The lights above the main aisle flickered out in a line, one after another, coming closer. I hit the emergency latch, nothing. The motion lights near Bay 3 snapped on. In their glow, I saw him, standing at the far end of the warehouse. My shape, my height, my jacket. He raised his hand again, not waving this time, but beckoning. Something in my chest cracked open, half panic, half recognition. My breath fogged even though the air was dry. He spoke without moving his mouth. The sound came from the walls, from the floor. When the sun rises, one of us stays. I bolted for the side office, slammed the door, shoved a metal chair under the handle. Inside, the only light came from the computer monitor's screensaver bouncing lazily from corner to corner. 3:27 a.m., 3 hours until dawn. I sat there shaking, listening to my own heartbeat, until I realized there was another one. Slightly off, like an echo lagging a second behind. It wasn't in the room. It was in the walls. I needed to call someone. 911, anyone. But when I pulled out my phone, the screen showed a text draft I hadn't written. I'm staying. Tell him he can go. The cursor blinked, waiting. Before I could delete it, the phone vibrated in my hand. The same unknown number flashed across the screen, and a single message appeared. Time to choose. Then every light in the warehouse went out again. Silence. The door handle of the office began to turn slowly against the metal chair. Once, twice. Then the sound of knuckles tapping, polite, rhythmic. The voice came through the door low and calm. Even. It's me. You can rest now. I backed into the far corner, hand gripping the edge of the desk so hard my nails bent. The tapping stopped. A pause. Then, from inside the room, just beside my ear, a whisper. Let me in. I didn't think. I swung the chair at the sound. It hit the wall, bounced, clanged to the floor. Nothing there. But when I looked back at the door, it was open. And in the doorway stood the reflection. Only now there was nothing glossy about him. He was matte, drained of light, edges too sharp against the air. His eyes were flat silver, like coins underwater. He looked exactly like me. Same clothes, same sweat on the collar. Only difference, he wasn't breathing. He smiled. Shift change, he said. I bolted past him. His hand caught my sleeve. Cold, dry, impossible strength. But I tore free, sprinting down the hallway toward the emergency stairwell. The lights down the corridor flared white, searing. For a moment I could see everything, both of us running, my shadow ahead, his shadow overlapping mine. Then darkness again. When I stumbled through the outer door, the night hit like a slap. Real air, real cold, stars still burning faint above the desert. The warehouse behind me went silent. I stood in the lot, shaking, staring at the building that had swallowed my nights for weeks. Its windows reflected nothing. Then my phone buzzed. One new message, no number. Just text. 6:00 a.m. Clock out. The screen time read 5:59. The desert looked softer in the first light, all dust and lavender haze. I could see Reno's skyline in the distance, trembling faintly like a mirage. For a second, it was almost enough to make me believe the night hadn't happened. Almost. My phone still sat in my palm, the message glowing on the cracked screen. 6:00 a.m. Clock out. The clock read 5:59. When it flipped to 6:00, the warehouse lights behind me shut off in a perfect sequence. A ripple from one end to the other, like a single long exhale. Then the padlock on the main gate clicked into place by itself. The silence that followed was absolute. I didn't go back inside. I couldn't. I sat in my car, engine idling, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes looked normal. My breathing matched the fog on the glass. But when I blinked, the reflection didn't. I slammed the mirror upward until it faced the roof. Drove home without looking back. My apartment felt too bright after all that fluorescent cold. Went straight to the sink, splashed water on my face, and tried to steady my breathing. When I looked up again, the mirror over the counter showed me something off, a faint bruise circling my wrist. The same spot the reflection had grabbed me last night. The skin was gray around the edges, almost metallic. I pressed on it. The bruise felt cold. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but the sound filled the quiet until I had to. Oven. It was Kearney's voice. Tired, brittle. You didn't finish your shift. I did, I said. I left when I was supposed to. A pause, then a sigh. You left early. I watched the sun rise in the parking lot. Still early, he said. It has to end at dawn. Something about the way he said it, instead of the shift, made my stomach drop. I hung up. That afternoon, I tried to sleep, but dreams came instead. Shallow, feverish flashes of eyes stretching out forever, walls breathing, and something tapping just beneath the bed frame in rhythm with my pulse. When I woke up around dusk, my phone had 6 missed calls from Kearney and 1 voicemail from an unlisted number. I listened to it once, then twice. It was my own voice. Don't clock in tonight. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far over the mountains. A storm was finally coming. I stood by the window watching the first few drops hit the pavement. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Kearney himself. Need you in by 7. Terry's position still open. Bring your badge. I should have ignored it. But something about the phrasing, Terry's position still open, froze me. I drove back out anyway. The warehouse sat under heavy clouds, the neon glow from the sign flickering in the rain. When I pulled up, the lot was empty except for one car I didn't recognize. a faded blue sedan with government plates. Inside, the air was warm, thick with ozone. The first thing I noticed was the smell, not rot, not mold, something metallic and sweet. The second thing was that the rule sheet was back on the wall by the clock, in terminal. Different font now, cleaner, and the list was shorter. Only 5 lines. 1. Follow the sequence. 2. Do not break the mirror. 3. Shift change completes at dawn. 4. Only one leaves. 5. Lock the door. Someone had scribbled a note in the corner in shaky handwriting, corporate approved. Kearney was waiting near bay 2, arms folded, tie loosened. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You came back?" he said. "You told me to." He nodded, slow. "Good. It's better when they come on their own." "Who's they?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just gestured toward the far end of the building. "Show up at bay 3. He's expecting you." I didn't move. Kearney rubbed his temples. "You broke protocol last night, Evan? You looked when you weren't supposed to. You spoke when you shouldn't have. It gets confused when that happens." "What gets confused?" He met my eyes then, and for a moment his expression cracked. Not fear exactly, but resignation. The part that wants to stay. Before I could say anything else, he walked toward his office, shut the door, and turned off the light. I stood there for a long time, the storm outside beating against the metal roof. The hum of the lights came and went in waves. I checked my watch, 10:48 p.m. At 1100 I heard footsteps from bay 3. Slow, deliberate. 2 sets. I followed them. Every instinct told me to leave, to get in the car and drive until the desert swallowed me. But something deeper pushed me forward. The bay was dimly lit, water dripping through a crack in the ceiling, puddles catching the glow from the emergency lights. And there, standing in front of the mirrors, was me, or him. He turned at the same time I did, perfectly synchronized. Same posture, same motion. Only difference was his eyes dull silver, reflecting everything but light. "Shift change," he said again, same tone, same rhythm as before. "It's almost dawn." "It's not," I whispered. "It's barely midnight." He smiled. "Time runs different on our side." I wanted to run. Instead, I asked, "What happens if I don't?" His smile faltered. "Someone has to stay. The door has to close. And if it doesn't..." He looked toward the ceiling, as if listening for something. The lights flickered once. Then it opens wider. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he extended his hand. His wrist, my wrist, bore the same dark mark as mine. "You already started?" he said. "Might as well finish." The hum deepened until the floor vibrated. The mirrors rippled, surface bending like wind over water. Behind him, I saw flashes. People standing in rows, shapes blurred by motion, some wearing uniforms, others worked jackets like mine. Their faces were featureless, silvered. "Follow the sequence," he said again. "What sequence?" He raised a hand toward the mirrors. "Step through." Lightning flashed outside, thunder rolling right after. The whole building shook. And in that flash, I saw him differently. Not me, not entirely. His outline frayed, edges flickering like bad film. Beneath the reflection, I caught glimpses of something else. Movement, depth, as if there was space inside the glass. Then, over the sound of the storm, came another voice. Kearney's, shouting from somewhere behind me. "Don't cross it!" "Not till it finishes." The reflection's head snapped toward the sound, eyes narrowing. "He broke the rules," he hissed. "He doesn't get to warn you." The glass behind him shattered outward, slow as syrup, pieces hanging in the air before freezing mid-fall. Through them, I saw nothing, just a black so dense it had shape. The reflection looked back at me, extended his hand once more. "End it. Please." Behind him, one of the shapes in the dark moved closer. Something larger, its face a blur of teeth and eyes, reaching forward as if impatient. Kearney's voice again, closer this time. "If you go, he stays forever!" "Do you hear me, Evan?" "He stays." The reflection's voice cut through his. "That's the point. For a second, everything, the storm, the hum, the flicker of the lights, stopped. I should have chosen right then, but I froze. The reflection stepped forward, half out of the mirror, his hand still extended. His skin shimmered like oil, like a film laid too thin over muscle. Shift change, he whispered. I reached out without meaning to. Our fingers met. Every nerve in my body locked. The air vanished. It felt like falling into static. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't tell which of us was moving. Then, just as suddenly, I was standing alone. The bay was empty. The mirrors gone. Only the sound of the rain on the roof remained. I looked down. The bruise on my wrist was gone. My breath came easy. It was 5:59 a.m. The first thin light of dawn bled through the loading dock windows. I staggered out into the lot. The sky was pale, washed clean by rain. My car was there. Kearney's wasn't. For a moment, I almost felt relief. Then I saw the reflection in the driver's side window. He smiled. This time, I didn't. He lifted a hand, pressed it against the inside of the glass from the wrong side. The surface fogged faintly around his palm, leaving one word traced backward in condensation. Stop. The rain stopped the moment I read the word. Stop. It slid off the car window like it never existed, leaving only clean glass and my own reflection staring back. Calm, breathing evenly, eyes too steady for someone who just crawled out of whatever that night was. But something in the reflection didn't line up. When I lifted my hand, it moved just a fraction slower. Not delayed like before, just tired, or pretending to be. The sky was pale gray, the kind that turns the desert flat and colorless. I told myself I'd drive home, shower, quit by email, and forget every inch of Silver Crown distribution. The kind of plan that sounds fine until you realize you don't actually feel like leaving. I got in the car anyway. The seat felt cold even through my jacket. The engine coughed twice before starting. The dashboard clock read 6:00 a.m. exactly. When I turned on the headlights, the warehouse in the mirror wasn't there anymore. The lot behind me was empty dirt and chain link fence. I pulled out onto the road that led back toward the city. The desert stretched wide on both sides, wet earth steaming. It should have been full sunrise by now, but the horizon stayed that pale pre-dawn gray, stuck in the same light as when I'd left. At the first intersection, I saw a man walking along the shoulder, tall, thin, wearing a reflective vest. I slowed down out of instinct. There wasn't supposed to be anyone out here this early. As I passed, he turned his head. It was Kearney. I hit the brakes, hard enough to make the tires scream. He didn't look surprised to see me, just lifted a hand and motioned for me to roll the window down. When I did, the air that came through was cold enough to sting. "You're late," he said. "For what?" He looked toward the horizon, squinting. "The second shift." I stared at him. "Kearney, what's going on? What happened to the warehouse? It's gone." He nodded slowly, as if that was the answer he expected. "It always is, after the handoff." "What handoff?" He leaned on the car door. "Listen to me carefully. If you made it out, you need to keep moving. Don't stop until the light changes." "What light?" He pointed upward. I followed his hand to the sky. The sun hadn't risen yet. It was just hanging there, an orange smear behind cloud. Too low, too still. "I don't understand," I said. He smiled, faint and humorless. "Then you're probably still inside." I blinked, and when I looked again, he wasn't there. The road was empty. I sat in the car until the sweat on my back went cold. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. A notification I didn't want to check but couldn't ignore. New email. From Silver Crown HR subject. "Welcome to Silver Crown distribution. Night associate orientation packet." I hadn't applied again. I hadn't sent a thing. The timestamp said it arrived 10 minutes ago. I opened it. The email was brief. "Dear Evan Mercer, we are pleased to confirm your continued employment at Silver Crown Distribution. Your previous experience has been recognized. Please report for your next shift tonight at 6:00 p.m. sharp. Follow the sequence. Do not break the mirror. Regards, SC. Night operations. At the bottom was a small signature block. Supervisor, Evan Mercer. I threw the phone into the passenger seat. The car engine ticked softly as the heat faded from the hood. The desert stretched silent and endless in every direction. And then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the ridge, I heard it. The low, rhythmic hum of machinery. The sound of the warehouse lights. I pressed the gas and didn't look back. By the time I hit the main highway, the sun had climbed higher, though not in the way it should. The light was brighter, yes, but there were no shadows. The world looked overexposed, like a photograph left too long in chemical wash. Cars passed me going both ways, all tinted glass and faceless drivers. None of them honked, none even slowed. I drove until the gas gauge hit empty and a sign for a diner appeared ahead. A squat building with a faded red roof and a gravel lot. I pulled in, shaking, hands still clutching the steering wheel long after the engine stopped. Inside, the place smelled like burnt coffee and frying oil. A single waitress wiped down the counter. She glanced up, friendly, routine. "Morning? Long night? Something like that?" I said. My voice sounded normal, maybe too normal. She poured coffee without asking. "You look like you could use it." I sat, stared at the steam rising from the mug, and finally asked, "You ever hear of a place called Silver Crown Distribution?" She frowned. "Out by the frontage road. That warehouse burned down years ago." "You sure you mean that one?" My stomach turned. "Burned down when?" "6 years back. Big accident. Whole night crew gone." I looked at her, trying to read her face for a hint of a joke. "Anyone make it out?" She shook her head. Not that I heard. The coffee trembled in my hand. I forced a laugh that didn't sound like mine. Wes, I heard wrong. The bell above the door chimed, breaking the moment. A man walked in, tall, thin, wearing a reflective vest. The same one I'd seen on the road. Kearney. The waitress didn't look up. She just kept wiping the counter like no one had entered. He took the stool next to mine. The air between us smelled faintly like rain on concrete. "You didn't keep moving," he said. My voice cracked.
"Where am I?"
He looked at the coffee cup. "Closer than you think." I turned to face him fully. "Why me?" "Because you stayed," he said simply. "You looked when you shouldn't have. You answered when it called. That's all it needs, a response." The waitress set down a check beside my cup. The total read 0 by Zodru. Beneath it, in her looping handwriting, were 3 words: "Clock out, please." When I looked up to ask her what it meant, she was gone. The diner was empty. Outside, the horizon pulsed once. A faint flicker of light, as if the sun itself had blinked. Kearney stood, slid a set of keys across the counter. My badge was attached to them. The same ID I dropped on the warehouse floor the night before. "Shift starts at 6, he said. "You'll know where to go." Then he walked out into the pale light. I followed him to the door, but the lot was empty again. Only my car sat there, clean, engine idling, headlights already on. The dashboard clock read 5:55 p.m. My phone buzzed once, unknown number. Follow or replace. I stared at the screen until the message faded. My own reflection in the glass looked back, mouth moving a split second after mine. I started the drive back before I could think. The desert light dimmed behind me, fading into that same gray twilight that never seemed to end. By the time the warehouse came into view, my hands were steady. The chain link gate was open, swaying in the wind. The building looked new, paint unpeeled, lights humming steady, as if it had never burned, never changed. Someone stood by the door, not Kearney. Me. He wore the same jacket, the same faded name tag. The bruise on his wrist was gone. He smiled when I got out of the car. "You're early," he said. "I wasn't going to come." He nodded. "None of us ever are." I looked past him at the doorway. The hum inside grew louder, pulling at the air like a tide. "What happens if I go in?" I asked. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the entrance. Then it starts over. And if I don't? He tilted his head, that same slow grin. Then it finds someone else. The wind kicked up dust between us. The warehouse lights flickered once, twice. I realized I was counting again. Old habit. When they steadied, he was gone. Only the open door remained, the sound of machinery pulsing faintly beyond. I stood there until my phone buzzed one last time. From Silver Crown HR subject clock. In reminder, 1600 p.m. message, thank you for your continued service, Evan. Shift change confirmed. The sky behind the warehouse burned orange. Dawn or dusk, I couldn't tell anymore. I stepped forward. The door closed behind me. The door sealed with a soft metallic click. I turned the handle out of instinct, but it didn't move. Behind me, the sky dimmed as if someone had turned down the brightness on a screen. Inside, the warehouse hummed alive. Brighter, cleaner, colder than before. The air smelled of new paint and static. Every shelf was stocked, every forklift perfectly aligned. It felt staged, like a photograph of a place pretending to work. The clock by the time terminal reads 600 p.m. sharp, and taped beside it, laminated and crisp, was a new list. Silver Crown Distribution. Night Operations Protocol 1. Follow the sequence. 2. Keep the intercom active. 3. When the lights flicker, answer immediately. 4. The reflection knows what to do. 5. Don't disappoint him. There was no signature. No note. Just the faint imprint of a thumb smudge in the corner. Mine. Maybe. I stood there long enough for the motion lights to dim. The silence pressed in like fabric. Then, from the intercom, a voice. Welcome back. Evan. It wasn't Kearney. It wasn't me either. Something between the two, like a voice spliced from both. Smooth, even, with a faint mechanical echo. You're on sequence 4, it said. Proceed to Bay 3. I almost laughed. After everything, after all the rules, I was back where I'd started. But this time, I didn't fight it. Maybe because I was too tired. Or maybe because a small part of me wanted to see what happened when you finally stopped running. As I walked the aisles, the lights turned on ahead of me and shut off behind. The hum moved with me, pulsing like a heartbeat. My footsteps echoed softer than they should have, as though the floor wasn't entirely solid. When I reached Bay 3, I stopped breathing. There were no mirrors this time, just a wall of polished metal, seamless from floor to ceiling. I could see my reflection clear and sharp, every crease of my face, every twitch in my eye, but the reflection wasn't perfectly in sync. When I raised my hand, it hesitated. When I blinked, it smiled. Sequence 4 initiated. The voice said through the intercom. The reflection lifted its hand to its ear, mimicking the headset I wasn't wearing. You'll need to answer, it said. I swallowed. Answer what? It tilted its head, almost pitying. You. The hum rose in pitch, deepening until I could feel it in my bones. The air in front of the wall shimmered, heatless but alive, and then the reflection stepped forward. Not out of the metal, but through it, as if distance didn't apply. We stood inches apart. He was breathing now. That was new. I could see his chest rise and fall, hear the faint rasp like he'd learned how by imitation. Why me? I asked. Because you stayed, he said. Same answer as before, but now the tone held weight, almost sympathy. You looked. You listened. You followed. He stepped closer until I could see the flecks of silver in his irises. Now it's your turn. For what? He smiled, small, tired, to rest. He reached out, touched my shoulder. The contact was cold at first, then hot, then nothing. The warehouse flickered. 1 second bright, the next plunged into black. And in that black, I wasn't standing anymore. I was watching. Through glass. From the other side of the metal wall, I could see him. Me. Still standing where I'd been, still breathing, still blinking. He turned toward the intercom, pressed the button, and spoke with my voice. Bay 3 clear, he said, proceeding to next sequence. The voice that answered wasn't human. It was the hum itself, shaped into words. Confirmed. Begin cycle 5. I slammed my hand against the inside of the glass, but no sound came. The surface rippled where I touched it, like water disturbed by wind. He looked toward the wall, toward me, and for a brief second our eyes met. He smiled. Then he turned away. The world inside the glass, my world, began to fade to gray. The sound of the warehouse drifted further and further, until all that remained was the faint rhythm of machinery running somewhere I couldn't reach. Then, faintly, another sound. Footsteps. Not mine. I turned toward the echo, but there was no light to see by. Just shapes, shadows moving across a dim horizon. Figures pacing in silence, some standing, some crouched, all with faces too bright to look at directly. One of them, a woman, stopped near me. Her uniform bore a name tag, Terry. I tried to speak, but my voice came out like static. She shook her head gently, like she'd seen this before. Then she pointed toward the far side of the dim expanse, where a faint glow pulsed like a heartbeat behind layers of haze. "Cycle ends at dawn," she said, her voice muffled by distance. "Don't answer when it calls your name." Before I could reply, the light flared white. For a second, I wasn't sure which side of the wall I was on anymore. Then I was standing again, but the warehouse wasn't the same. It was older, darker. Dust layered every surface. The air hung thick and stale, as if the place had been sealed for years. The lights were dead. Only the open bay door let in enough gray daylight to show rows of rusted shelving and collapsed crates. The sign by the clock in terminal was still there, yellowed and brittle, the ink faded almost to nothing. The words barely legible, but I could still make them out. Silver Crown Distribution, Silos D. Property condemned 2019. My heart slammed once hard. I stepped back, stumbling over a pile of debris. The sound echoed too long, bouncing through the hollow space like a shout in a cave. I pulled my phone from my pocket, but the screen was blank. Just a faint reflection staring back. When I touched it, the reflection grinned. Outside, the desert looked exactly as it had the morning I first left. Soft gray light, horizon stuck in half dawn. I walked out into it, the dust crunching under my boots. Every few steps, I looked over my shoulder to be sure the building stayed where it was. It didn't. Each time I turned, the warehouse looked a little newer. The roof whole, the paint brighter. By the time I reached the road, it was alive again. Lights on, doors sealed, hum steady. A car rolled up the gravel drive, an old sedan with a faded logo on the side. A man stepped out, clipboard in hand. He wore the vest of a new hire, shiny and clean. He squinted up at the sign. Silver Crown Distribution. He read aloud. Night shift, right? I opened my mouth to tell him to leave, but my throat locked. The words wouldn't come. My voice wasn't mine anymore. He saw me standing by the fence and smiled politely. "You work here too." I nodded before I realized I had. "Any advice?" he asked. "First night." My lips moved on their own. "Follow the rules," I said. He laughed. "Yeah, what kind of rules?" The wind rose, carrying the faint hum from the warehouse. I heard myself say, calm and even, "You'll see them when you clock in." He thanked me, waved, and walked toward the door. I wanted to yell, to warn him, to do anything. But I just stood there, watching as he disappeared inside. The moment he did, the lights flared once, steadying into that same cold fluorescence I'd come to know too well. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen flickered back to life, showing a single new message. From Silver Crown HR subject, Supervisor Transition confirmed message. "Thank you for training your replacement. Evan, your cycle is complete." Beneath the message, there was an attachment, a photo. The security feed from Bay 3. In it, the new hire was standing where I once stood, staring at the mirrored wall. Behind the glass, my reflection smiled and waved. The desert was quiet again, the kind of quiet that feels staged. The warehouse light flickered once behind me, pale against the horizon that refused to turn into real morning. I stood by the fence, phone heavy in my hand, reading that message over and over until the words stopped meaning anything. Supervisor transition confirmed. Your cycle is complete. I didn't know if that meant freedom or a new form of captivity. Maybe they were the same thing here. The warehouse door hissed open, spilling fluorescent light across the gravel. The new hire. His name tag caught the glow for just a second. D. Fletcher. Walked out carrying a clipboard. He squinted into the half-light, blinking like someone who'd stepped out of a dream. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and just didn't recognize what he was seeing. I should have called out, told him to leave before the sun rose, or set, or whatever that stalled sky was doing. But the words stayed locked somewhere between my chest and throat. When I tried to speak, my breath came out cold, and the sound died before it reached the air. He stopped halfway to his car, frowned, and looked back toward the building. From where I stood, I could see the faint shimmer of the mirrored wall through the open door, glowing faintly like liquid metal. The hum rolled out again, steady, slow, like a lung-drawing breath. He hesitated, turned back toward it. And I realized that was the moment the cycle began again. I'd seen that hesitation before, in myself, in the way my curiosity had outweighed sense. That moment of wanting to know more, just enough to ruin you. He disappeared inside. The hum deepened. The door closed. For a long time, I stayed at the fence, staring at the outline of the building, waiting for something different to happen. But the rules were clear, even if I'd never written them myself. Once the cycle resets, the outside doesn't get in anymore. When the wind shifted, I heard it whisper through the chain links. Tiny vibrations that sounded almost like words. Follow or replace. I left the lot. The highway back toward Reno looked wrong in daylight. Too clean, too new. Even the mile markers were fresh paint. I passed an empty billboard that read Silver Crown Logistics, serving Nevada since 2025. It was 2025 now. The warehouse had supposedly burned 6 years ago. I didn't know what that meant anymore. At a gas station outside town, I caught my reflection in the glass of the refrigerator door. It startled me, though I should have expected it. My face was the same, but sharper around the edges, pupils rimmed faintly in silver. When I breathed, there was no fog. The attendant, a kid no older than 20, glanced up and froze halfway through wiping the counter. "You okay, sir?" I nodded, too slow. He smiled awkwardly. "You're bleeding," he said, pointing to my wrist. I looked down. A thin, dark line circled it like a seam, not a cut. The same spot the reflection had touched me that first night. I pulled my sleeve down, paid for gas, and drove until the mountains swallowed the radio signal. That night I stopped at a roadside motel. The clerk slid the key across the counter and said, "Checkout's at 6 sharp." Something in the way he said it made my chest tighten. Room 17 was small, one window, one mirror. I covered it with a towel before sleeping. Around 2:00 a.m., I woke to knocking. 3 soft taps at the door. My phone screen lit up without a sound. Unknown number. Don't open it. I lay there until the light outside the window shifted from black to the same gray half. Morning that never quite ended. When I checked out, the clerk smiled politely and said, "See you next shift, Mr. Mercer." I didn't correct him. A week later, I found myself driving back toward the desert without deciding to. The road just led there. The radio was static for miles until a voice cut through. My own, faint and distant, saying Bay 3 clear. Proceeding to next sequence. The transmission looped once, then faded. When the warehouse appeared on the horizon, it looked exactly as it had that first night, humming, alive, new. A white company truck was parked near the entrance. Someone else was there now. Through the windshield, I could see the new supervisor standing by the dock doors. D. Fletcher, clipboard in hand. His movements were familiar. Checking inventory, scanning, logging, routine. When he turned toward the glass of Bay 3, his reflection didn't follow immediately. It stayed watching me. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and laughed. Quiet, exhausted, not sure which part of this I still belonged to. Then I realized the reflection in the warehouse window had lifted its hand, waving again. Later, I tried leaving Nevada altogether. Made it as far as Sacramento before I saw the logo again, painted on a semi-truck at a stoplight SC, NIGHTOPRIINS. The driver's silhouette looked like Kearney. I turned the other way. Wherever I went, the hum followed. In streetlights flickering 3 times before steadying. In mirrors catching my eye a half, beat late. In strangers who smiled a moment too long before speaking. The rules had left the building, or maybe I'd never really left it. Sometimes when I wake between midnight and dawn, I hear the sound of the intercom again. It always says the same thing. Welcome back, Evan. And I always answer, though I don't mean to. Bay 3 clear, then silence. Once, I recorded the night. Set up my phone facing the dark window. When I played it back in the morning, I heard a second voice, half a second behind mine, whispering every line. It wasn't echo, it was instruction. I drove out one last time, needed to see if it was still there or if I was chasing a ghost. The frontage road was half buried in sand, the sign bent nearly double, but the gate was open. The warehouse stood whole, no wind, no sound. Inside, dust drifted through the sunlight. The floor was cracked. But against the far wall, something new was waiting, a metal plaque bolted into the concrete. I wiped the dirt off with my sleeve. I am a Mawa OFT Selvish R CRWN HTCF Shepashara 2025. Beneath that, 7 names. Mine among them. I knelt there until the light dimmed again, until my reflection in the plaque began to move on its own. It smiled, same as always, patient as a closing door. From behind me came the faint scrape of a clipboard on metal, the shuffle of boots. Cycle 8, a voice said. I didn't turn. The lights came on, one by one. The hum rose. The rule sheet slid out from beneath the door like an invitation. Silver Crown Distribution. Night Operations 1. Report by 6:00 p.m. 2. Follow the sequence. 3. Don't answer unless it calls you first. 4. When the mirror smiles, smile back. 5. Lock the door. Someone had written a 6th line in fresh ink, smaller, almost hesitant. 6. Thank you, Evan. I folded the sheet, slipped it into my jacket, and walked to Bay 3. The mirrored wall was clean again, shining like water waiting for a stone. My reflection was already there, smiling softly, as though I'd kept it waiting too long. I nodded once. Shift change, it said. Shift change, I echoed. And as our hands met through the glass, the lights steadied, the hum deepened, and the desert outside held its breath. Dawn, or dusk, spilled thin light through the cracks in the wall. It didn't matter which. Inside Silver Crown Distribution, time had already made its choice.